You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Since 1877, Australia and England have been battling out against each other in Test cricket. Over that time, many players have had the honour of captaining their country in an Ashes series or in an Ashes test. There have been 42 captains to captain Australia in Ashes cricket and 55 captains to captain England in Ashes cricket. For the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast historical series, we are looking back at all the players who've captained Australia and England in Ashes cricket. In this historical series episode, we are looking back at the Ashes captains who captained Australia in the 2000s. Steve Waugh is one of Australian cricket's greatest players and became the second Australian batsman behind Alan Border to score 10,000 test runs. Tugger, as he was known, was a tough, determined batsman who mentally disintegrated the opposition. He became the 40th Australian Test captain, taking over from Mark Taylor. His Ashes captaincy reign spanned from 2001 to 2003 and led Australia in 2 Ashes series. In that time, he led Australia to 2 Ashes series victories in 2001 and 2002-03. In 9 tests, he won 8, lost 1 and drawn none. His Ashes record was just like his test record, scoring 3,173 runs at 58.75 with 10 centuries, highest score of 177 not out in 45 Ashes tests between 1986 to 2003. Waugh produced some outstanding performances in Ashes cricket as a player. The 1989 Ashes series in England was the making of Waugh as a Test cricketer. He scored 506 runs at 126.50 with 2 centuries, highest score of 177 not out in 6 Test matches. His 177 not out in the first Test at Headingley was his maiden Test century, and he backed it up with a superb 152 not out at Lord's in the second Test. In the 2001 Ashes series in England, he scored one of his best Test centuries at the Oval of 157 not out in the final Test. Waugh had injured his calf during the 3rd Test of the series and missed the 4th Test, which was captained by Adam Gilchrist. Waugh returned for the final Test and pushed through the Paine to score a courageous century. But Waugh's best performance of his Ashes career came in the 2002-03 Ashes series in Australia. Waugh entered the final Test at the SCG under pressure, with his form declining and his spot in the side in doubt. He scored what was one of the best hundreds of his career. On the last ball of day 2, he smashed England spinner Richard Dawson through the covers for 4 to bring up his century. He scored 102 in his final Ashes Test. Adam Gilchrist is one of Australian cricket's greatest wicketkeepers ever to play for Australia. He revolutionised the role of the wicketkeeper from someone in the team who can keep wicket to someone who can bat and score runs as well. Gilchrist had the honour of captaining Australia on 4 occasions throughout his Test career. He became Australia's 41st Test captain and took over the captaincy during the 4th Test at Headingley of the 2001 Ashes series when Captain Steve Waugh was ruled out due to a calf injury. In the one and only Ashes Test he captained, Australia lost by 6 wickets. Australia went on to win the 2001 Ashes series 4-1 in the best of 5. Gilchrist's Ashes record was good, scoring 1,083 runs at 45.12, with 3 centuries, highest score of 152 as a batsman. He took over 96 dismissals with 89 catches and 7 stumpings as a wicketkeeper in 20 Ashes tests between 2001 to 2007. Gilchrist's best Ashes performance came in the 2006-07 Ashes in Australia. In the 3rd Test of the Waugh, he scored a magnificent century of 102 not out. He scored his century off 57 balls, which was the second fastest at the time in Test cricket, behind Viv Richards' then record of 56 balls. He smashed the England bowlers to all parts of the Waugh. It will go down as one of the best Ashes centuries. Ricky Ponting is one of Australian cricket's greatest captains and batsmen ever to play for Australia. He became Australia's 42nd Test captain, taking over from Steve Waugh. His Ashes captaincy reign spanned from 2005 to 2010 and led Australia in 4 Ashes series. In that time, he led Australia to 1 Ashes series victory in 2006-7. Australia won that series 5-0, and Ponting became only the second Ashes captain to win an Ashes series 5-0, following Australian captain Warwick Armstrong, who was the first captain to win 5-0 back in 1920-21. He lost 3 Ashes series in 2005, 2009 and 2010-11. In 19 tests, he won 8, lost 6 and drawn 5. His Ashes record was outstanding, scoring 2,476 runs at 44.21, with 8 centuries, highest score of 196, in 35 Ashes tests between 1997 to 2010. Ponting produced some outstanding performances in Ashes cricket. He scored his first ever Test century in the 1997 Ashes series in England, scoring 127 at Headingley. In 2005, during the 3rd Test of the 2005 Ashes series, he scored an important century, scoring 156 in Australia's second innings to ensure Australia drew the Test and stayed alive in the 2005 Ashes series. His 196 he scored in the first Test of the 2006-7 Ashes series in Australia set the tone for the series, and Australia reclaimed the Ashes 5-0 after the heartache of losing them in 2005. Despite having Ashes success as a player and winning a series as captain, Ponting led an Australian side that underwent major change following the 2006-7 Ashes series, with the retirements of Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath and Justin Langer. Unfortunately for Ponting and Australia, England cashed in on years of Paine in Ashes cricket. For Ponting, his last Ashes test at the MCG during the 2010-11 series would be his last. He injured his finger during the test and couldn't captain the final test at the SCG, where Micheal Clarke took over the captaincy. Micheal Clarke was a fine and talented batsman who was destined for great things. From his Test century on debut against India in 2004, you knew there and then he would be a fine player. His Test career for Australia reflected that talent, and he achieved everything there is to achieve in the game of cricket. As captain, he led Australia to countless victories and helped the team reach number 1 in the Test rankings. Also led the team to an Ashes victory and an ODI Cricket World Cup title in 2015. He became Australia's 43rd Test captain, taking over from Ricky Ponting. His Ashes captaincy reign spanned from 2011 to 2015 and led Australia in 3 Ashes series. In that time, he led Australia to 1 Ashes series victory in 2013-14. He became the 3rd captain in Ashes history to win an Ashes series 5-0 behind Warwick Armstrong, 1920-21, and Ricky Ponting, 2006-7. He lost 2 Ashes series in 2013 and 2015. His first ever Ashes test in charge as captain was in 2010-11, when he took over the captaincy for the 5th test after captain Ricky Ponting injured his finger in the previous test at Melbourne. Australia lost that match by an innings and 83 runs. In 16 tests, he won 7, lost 7 and drawn 2. His Ashes record was good, scoring 2,241 runs at 40.74 with 7 centuries, high score of 187 in 35 Ashes tests between 2005 to 2015. Clarke produced some good performances in Ashes cricket. His 136 in the 2nd test at Lords of the 2009 series was an outstanding innings, in a lost cause for Australia. Clarke's last Ashes test at the Oval during the 2015 series was his last ever test match for Australia. After a tough Ashes series as captain, Australia lost the series. He decided to retire from the game. It wasn't the happy ending he wanted, but it was an outstanding career. Steve Smith will go down as one of Australian cricket's greatest batsmen and one of Ashes cricket's greatest batsmen. His achievements are on par with that of Sir Donald Bradman, and he continues to amaze us. For someone who averages well over 60 in Test cricket, he is a cut above the rest. He became Australia's 45th Test captain, taking over from Micheal Clarke. His Ashes captaincy reign spanned from 2017 to 2021 and led Australia in 1 Ashes series. In that time, he led Australia to one Ashes series victory in 2017-18. In the 2021-22 series in Australia, he took over the captaincy for the second test of the series due to Pat Cummins being unavailable due to unforeseen circumstances. In 6 tests, he won 5, lost none, and drawn 1. His Ashes record is a carbon copy of his test record, scoring 3,044 runs at 59.68, with 11 centuries, highest score of 239 in 32 Ashes tests between 2010 to the current day. In 2018, he was stripped of the captaincy due to his part in the ball tampering saga in Cape Town. Smith has produced some outstanding performances in Ashes cricket. In the 2019 Ashes series in England, on his comeback to international cricket following his year banned, he produced a Bradman-type series, scoring 774 runs at 110.57 with 3 centuries, highest score of 211 from 4 tests. Only Donald Bradman has more runs in an Ashes series, with 974 runs in 1930. In the first test, he scored back-to-back hundreds at Edgbaston with 144 and 142. Then in the second test at Lord's, he scored 92. In the fourth test at Old Trafford, he scored 211 and 82. And in the final test at the Oval, he scored 80 in the first innings. Smith is definitely one of a kind, and he could have another outstanding Ashes series in 2023. Tim Paine had an up-and-down test career as a wicketkeeper, which was plagued by injuries. But in 2017-18, he was included in the Ashes squad, which surprised many people at first, and even Paine himself, who thought he would never return to Test cricket ever again. But the selectors said he was the best gloveman at the time. It was another chance, and he made the most of it. He became Australia's 46th Test captain, following the fallout from Cape Town in 2018, where Steve Smith resigned as captain. He helped rebuild Australia from complete humiliation to a team that earned the respect back of the Australian public, following Cape Town. His Ashes captaincy reign spanned from 2019 to 2019 and led Australia in one Ashes series. In that time, he led Australia to a drawn Ashes series in 2019. Australia didn't win the series, but Paine became the first Australian captain since Steve Waugh in 2001 to retain the Ashes in England. A proud achievement nonetheless. In 5 tests, he won 2 and lost 2, and drawn 1. His Ashes record saw him score 372 runs at 28.61, with 2 half-centuries, highest score of 58 as a batsman. He took over 46 dismissals with 45 catches and 1 stumping as a wicketkeeper in 10 Ashes tests between 2017 to 2019. On the eve of the 2021-22 Ashes series in Australia, Paine resigned from the captaincy due to unforeseen circumstances. Despite that, Paine should be proud of what he achieved as captain, and proud of leading an Australian side to retain the Ashes in England in 2019, for the first time since 2001. Pat Cummins will go down as one of Australian cricket's great bowlers. Cummins' Test career has been up and down, with countless injuries plaguing his early days. From his first Test in South Africa in 2011, where he took 6 wickets on debut, you knew he would achieve great things. After a 6-year hiatus, he returned to Test cricket, but never in his wildest dreams he would ever be captain of Australia. But on the eve of the 2021-22 Ashes series in Australia, that dream became a reality, when then captain Tim Paine resigned due to unforeseen circumstances. He became Australia's 47th Test captain, and in his first ever Ashes series as captain, he led Australia to a 4-0 series victory. He missed the second Test at Adelaide due to unforeseen circumstances, and Steve Smith took over in his absence. His Ashes record is impressive, taking 73 wickets at 20.75 with best innings figures of 5 for 38, best match figures of 8 for 119, 6 5-wicket hauls, and 1 10-wicket haul in 14 Ashes tests between 2017 to the current day. For Cummins, his biggest test will come in the form of leading Australia in an away Ashes series, hoping he can lead Australia to their first Ashes series win in England since 2001. But he will need to stop Bazball. It will be a challenge with England led by Ben Stokes. Hi everyone, hope you enjoyed our historical series episodes, looking back at the Ashes captains who captain Australia in Ashes cricket.